Hello, welcome to Winterdance Books. My name is Julia and welcome to the Friends Readathon. Also, I wear hats now. I watched something that said hats aren't in fashion and I said I will affix fashion, and that is why I'm wearing this hat and not because I did not want to wash my hair. Anyway, the Friends Readathon was created by Tyra and the Books. I will link their announcement video down below. Go check it out. It will explain everything much better than I did. I will also link my original TBR video. This is the vlog, where we are going to read one book for each of the friends based on an iconic line that they say from the show. There will also be 2 intermissions where we just talk about some fun stuff, some friends-related activities, and it's going to be a good time. Timestamps below. Jump around if you only care about book stuff, if you only care about my opinions on Friends, there are options for you. But let's quickly talk about each of the books for each of the friends. Rachel's prompt is Rachel always cries to read an emotional book, and I'm going to be reading In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. Under the Whispering Door and The Cerulean Sea are some of my favorite books, they are most people's favorite books, and this is his latest release. I actually got an arc of it. This comes out April 25th, and it is a sci-fi Pinocchio retelling. Then for Monica, her line is 7, and the prompt is to read a book with 7 letters in the title. I'm going to be reading Galatea by Madeline Miller. This because I wanted to find something with 7 letters and something short. This is a short story about Pygmalion, but told from the statue's perspective. Then for Phoebe and the line Regina Phalange, the prompt is to read a book by an author using a pen name, and I will be reading 1984, the graphic novel by George Orwell, which is a pen name for Eric Blair. I'm not going to fact check that. Eric is one of the names. I was about to be like, you know 1984, I don't have to pitch it for you, but like, I don't know. Then for Joey, the prompt is, what is all your furniture pointed at? Which is something I say, and the prompt is to read something with an adaptation, and I'm going to be reading Winterdance by Gary Paulson, which I picked because I believed it was the basis for the film Balto. It is not, and I will discover in the journey of this what this was actually used as an adaptation. And then for Chandler, the prompt is I'm hopeless and awkward and desperate for love, and the prompt is to read a romance. So I'm going to be reading Pestilence by Laura Thalassa, which is about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse coming down to destroy humanity, but oops, falling in love. And then the final prompt for Ross is We Were on a Break, which is to read a book in a series or a companion novel, and so I'm going to be reading the 3rd Finlay Donovan book, Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun, which is about an accidental hit woman. It has evolved past that at this point, but that's what the original pitch is, an accidental hit woman. Anyway, I'm very excited about this video. I'm a big Friends lover, so I hope that you enjoyed as well, and we can just get into it.
7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7.
So I finished Galatea. I knew that it was short, but it was even shorter than I expected it to be. It was only like 30 pages. I read it on my lunch hour. It wasn't great. My edition also didn't have any sort of author reflections, introduction, stuff like that, which I think could have made the story more interesting, but it didn't work for me. It's basically just the story of Pygmalion, but told from Galatea's perspective, who is the statue who is brought to life. And it only has one thing to say, which is men bad, which I totally agree with. men bad, but somehow 30 pages was still too much to say it in. From page 1, you sort of knew what was going on, and it never evolved past that. And I didn't think the writing was particularly stellar. Like, this just didn't do anything for me. And I'm not sure if it does anything for anybody. Like, this is not a highly rated thing in Madeline Miller's oeuvre, so who knows if it'll stand the test of time. In terms of whether Monica would like this, I think that she would say that she liked it, but not really get it. But if other people said that they didn't get it, she'd be like, oh, well, you know, I'm just smarter than everybody. I think it was fine for what it was. It wasn't originally on my TBR, like I had to find things that had 7 letters, and I think there's a good reason that it wasn't on my TBR, so at least it was short. I'm gonna give it 2 stars because it wasn't like bad, but I never had a good time. Madeline Miller and I don't generally get along. I gave Song of Achilles 3 stars and I DNF'd Circe, so I think this might be the end of our working relationship. I'm sure she's a lovely person though. We can still have a personal one.
I'm sorry, I don't own a TV.
You don't own a TV? What's all your furniture pointed at?
So I just started Winterdance. I just read the prologue, which was like 20 pages, and I'm obsessed with this. Like, I think this is going to be one of the best books that I read this year. This is nonfiction, so it opens up with Gary Paulson running through the mountains, training some of his dogs, so the problem dogs, he says. And just this series of events goes wrong, and he is in mortal peril, and the way that he gets out of it, how close he came to dying, and just the atmosphere that he builds. And the prose in this is incredible. He's originally an author of YA, and so like the prose in here is just incredible. I need to read you the last line of the prologue because I was like hooked. So he has this near-death experience, and he comes back and he's like contemplating on what went wrong, and he's like, I'm scared. I knew what scared me wasn't the canyon and wasn't the hook hanging by one prong, but the knowledge, the absolute fundamental knowledge that I could not stop, would never be able to stop running dogs of my own free will. What incredible. Like, that's the exact kind of prose that I want. Like, I'm getting chills like literally right now thinking about it, because this is just so good. And my husband read this prior to me, but like I think he undersold how good this is, and I've been scared to pick it back up ever since that opening, because I know I'm gonna get too attached, and if anything bad happens to these dogs, I'm gonna lose it. Also, a great map in the beginning that I know I will be referring to a lot. Just really gives you a sense of the scale of what we're going for here. I'm just absolutely in love with this. If you can read a sample online, if you can make it through that prologue and not want to pick up the rest of the book, I was gonna say you're better than me, but no, like, you're worse. Have fun. This is incredible. I was thinking before I read this, like, I should reread Hatchet because it's Gary Paulson, but like, I have so many books on my TBR, but after 20 pages, I'm like, yeah, I have to read Hatchet again. There's also a couple of pages of photographs in here, and I'm just obsessed. This is everything I ever wanted, and I will update you, I assume, when my heart is broken. So I finished Winterdance, and I'm giving it 5 stars. I think that this is such a good book. It's interesting though, because my expectations after the beginning are quite different from what the book ended up being. Not what the book ended up being, but like the style of it. Because from the beginning I was like, this book is going to destroy me. And I didn't cry, which is rare for me. But it's because the way that he writes is always just a little bit removed. Emotional things are happening, but he's not describing it emotionally. And I don't think that it's a fault one way or the other. It's just something that I wasn't anticipating, because you feel very removed from him. You don't know this man as intimately as maybe you could in something else. I think that maybe part of that is just due to how tough the race is and how much he is struggling while on it, that reflecting on it is hard. It never leans sappy, which is interesting because he's talking about like the connection that he has with these dogs and how intimately he knows them. But you never get to like dig deep inside of that. He's just like, I love the dogs, and then you're moving on. It's very sparse, but in a great way. And this ends up basically just reading like a series of anecdotes almost. And they're all amazing. This is also just a comedy of errors. This is one of the dumbest men alive who makes the wrong decision at every turn, and it's a miracle that he lived through this. I was gonna say he's still alive, but he just died recently, like 2 years ago, so this is fine. This was written in the 90s, and I think he ran the race in the 80s, and I just want so much more from this. I know that he's written other nonfiction, so maybe I'll have to pick that up, but just, I need to know everything. Also, I should have mentioned at the top, huge content warning for dog death. Dogs do die in this, and it is not fun to read. So if you can handle that, absolutely pass on this one. But I wanted more reflection. I think that's a similar feeling that people had with Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died, is just you go through it through her eyes in the moment, and you want some retrospection on like, how does she feel about it now? What does she think? How does she think things impacted her in her life? And I feel similarly about this, where I don't want to give spoilers for whether he succeeds or not, but once he's done Iditarod, he it never reflects on it. There's like another brief chapter and then it's over. Like this thing is only 250 pages and you could have made it 400 and I would have been enthralled the entire time. This also feels similar to when I read House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, where I loved it but I just wanted more, and I think that if a book leaves you wanting more, that's a good thing. That's the sign of a good book, if not a great one. It's also just really funny. He's very witty. There's lots of interjections from his wife Ruth, who is way smarter than he is. I love Ruth so much. It's just a comedy of errors. Like there's so many wacky scenarios that this guy gets into. I totally forgot to tell you, but I figured out how we found this book. This is not the book that Balto is based on. This is the book that Snow Dogs is based on. The seminal classic from my childhood with Cuba Gooding Jr. Honestly, I can see it because this is just so goofy and just he fails at every possible turn and he knows nothing that I'm gonna have to rewatch Snow Dogs and see how many direct parallels are pulled from here. I don't think many. I think it is a very different story, like tone-wise, absolutely nothing. But if you want a man who is clueless to start learning about dogs and nature, there's so much beautiful nature imagery described in here. I want a reflection on this book because he ran the race in the 80s and I can only imagine how different the race is now because they don't have phones, they don't have GPS, like you are completely on your own in this thing, and I imagine that it's quite different. And tell me everything. Gary Paulson is an incredible writer, a very unique writer, and I had the best time doing this. I was reading it on the couch and my husband was nearby and he said, you were just reading with a smile on your face the entire time, which is exactly how this book made me feel other than the dog dead. There's so much that I want to talk about with this, but I'm not sure how to articulate it properly. So if you have any interest at all in reading this, absolutely go and pick it up. You will not regret it. Joey would love this book. This is such an ideal Joey book. It's kind of ridiculous that I chose this for him because he would just have the best time with it. He would think it was so cool. He would think it was hilarious and really care about these dogs. Like this is kind of a perfect Joey pick. I think this is also just amazing for being funny while not trying to be funny. This is the kind of humor that won't sour in a couple of years. Like this was written in the 90s and it's just very tongue-in-cheek, or he's making fun of himself. It is tense and thrilling and you need to read it. Okay, I'm done rambling now. I'm sorry. All right, first things first, we have to figure out which one of the friends I am. Generally, how I would classify myself, how I have, is that I am Monica and Chandler's child. Now, that seems extremely vain because they're the best ones, but is something that I believe. So we're gonna do this BuzzFeed quiz and find out. Although immediately this quiz is concerning me because it sounds like it's including Gunther and Mike. So like if I'm anyone, I'm probably Mike, just like a normal, reasonable person. But let's find out. Pick a color. My traditional color is blue. So I'm gonna go blue. I'm trying to go who I am, not what I like at the moment, you know? And I am blue. Pick a movie. A lot of these are fine. None of these are like my favorite movie though. I think I'm gonna pick Jurassic Park. Yeah, why not? Pick a season. What am I? What do I like? I feel like in my old age, I only see cons to each of the seasons. I'm gonna go with summer. I'm gonna go with summer because I love the beach and that's the only time you can do it. Pick a song. You know what? I know a lot of these and a lot of these are fine, but I think I have to go with You've Got a Friend in Me. I think I'm that type of person and I sing it all the time. So on a Friday night, I can be found at home. I'm gonna go with playing board games. It's a little adventurous for me, not every Friday, but that is a lovely way to spend a Friday for me. Pick a power. To what end though is the problem? Am I still me or am I a superhero? Actually, no, it doesn't matter. The answer is teleportation. That's just, it would make everything so much easier. Teleportation. Pick a bird. I famously hate birds. Don't ask me why, it's just a thing, but the obvious answer here is penguin, because they're funny. Pick a fantasy series. I'm a Lord of the Rings gal all the way. Who would you would rather date? No, okay, so they got it wrong. You would rather date. Okay. Well, my husband tells me that I am Liz Lemon, so that's a good one. But who would I date? All of these people are like way too high maintenance. Except for Liz, so yeah, I'm going with Liz. On New Year's Eve, I will be, generally I do go to a party and stuff. Is that what I would rather do? Maybe not. I would honestly love at some point to do a large fancy event, a huge ball or something. But almost always I'm at a small gathering with my close friends. Pick a show. This is unfortunate because I'm gonna have to pick Glee. Listen, I've seen some of these, but like, I am a musical theater kid. Glee is trash, but it's my trash. Damn it. Why? You know how usually they have the paragraph that just says my hair, which, thank you, but you're wrong. That's unexpected. Was it unexpected for you? What does it mean? I'm gonna have to do some serious therapy about this. I don't know what I should have picked. I don't know where I went wrong, but this is the world that I live in now, and it's unfortunate. But fine. Rachel's fine. Rachel's fine. She's just a little annoying, but she does have some proper character growth in the show, and she's the main character, so I'm the main character. That was a controversial statement, but arguably Rachel is the main character. Anyway, thanks. I'm gonna go have a crisis, and you can keep watching a vlog.
Oh, no, don't go! I've scared you. I've said too much. I'm hopeless and awkward and desperate for love.
Hello, I'm here to chat about the 2 books that I said I wasn't really gonna vlog. We're just gonna talk about them quickly here. The first one is for Chandler, whose prompt was hopeless and desperate, and I know it. Hopeless and awkward and desperate for love? That doesn't sound right, but it's all I got right now. So the prompt is just to read any romance, and I ended up reading Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. I read this for the Bradley Marie vlog, so I will link where you can watch my full thoughts on this. But generally, I thought it was fine. The romance was not my favorite part of it, certainly. I much more enjoyed the apocalyptic stuff. This is about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse coming down to Earth to destroy humanity. The first book is Pestilence, who is spreading a plague, and he has kidnapped a woman who tried to kill him and is making her come with him to watch him destroy all of humanity as like a punishment for her. But they fall in love. I never really bought into the romance on this one. It's a little bit too slow burn, and he's a little bit too much of a bad boy. I'm all for a little bit bad, but he is sort of, you know, death incarnate, so it's hard for me to get on board with. But all of the apocalyptic stuff I really liked. I thought there was a lot of body horror stuff in here that was really cool, and I had a good time, but it's definitely too long. It's 350 pages, and for something with a sort of, not joke premise, but tropey, silly, I don't know. I don't think it needed to be this long. It was very much repetitive. So I had a good time, but I don't think I'll be picking up the other books in the series. Now, as to whether or not Chandler would enjoy this, I don't think he would. I think that there is no world in which he could take this seriously. Definitely not a Chandler book, but a good enough Julia book. I give it 3 stars.
We were on a break. We were on a break. We were on a break.
The other book I read for Ross, whose prompt was, we were on a break, of course it was to read a book in the series. So I ended up reading Finlay, Donovan Jumps the Gun, which is the 3rd book in that series. So obviously, 3rd book in a series, I can't really talk about it very much. But this one features Finlay, who was accidentally hired as a hitwoman, sort of, and has gotten entangled in organized crime at this point. This one basically takes place at cop camp. It's not that, but basically everyone goes to sleepaway camp with a bunch of cops and they learn about stuff. It was very weird. It seems very contrived because she's dating a cop, and definitely not critical enough of the police, which was unfortunate. But I just want to play you a bit from the audiobook because I've said ever since the first book in this series that the audiobook narrator is the story. She's just incredible. And there's this one character voice that she does that I thought was just excellent, so I want to play a bit for you now.
That would make a great story. She wouldn't be able to uncover much on her own, though. She'd need a professional to examine it.
Anyway, she's still crushing it in this one. You sort of forget that she's doing character voices, especially the two leads, Finlay and Vera. Vera feels like her own fully formed person at this point and not just an offshoot of whatever the narrator's doing. And I just think she's incredible. Not incredible enough to know her name, though. Let me look. Angela Daw. Amazing. No notes. I thought this one was fine. I think that it is too convoluted at this point. There are a lot of mysteries carrying through multiple books, and I just don't have the mental fortitude to keep track of all of them, and so I was sort of just waiting around for them to tell me the answer. I do still want to know what happens, but I might just look up a plot summary once the next book comes out. And it was just announced that El Cosimano has been contracted to do books 5 through 7 too, so definitely not going to stick with it that much, but I am still curious to know what the solution to the mystery is. Now the question of would Ross like this book is a hard no. This series is known for being a little bit wacky and a little bit, you have to suspend your disbelief to get into it. Two things that I don't think Ross would be particularly adept at. I think he would complain loudly every time Finlay or Vera made a stupid decision, which is often. So yeah, this would not be fun. And it would not be fun to tell Ross that you had even read this book. Say what you will about Ross, but you know exactly how he would respond in every situation. That is a fully formed character. Like I said, I won't be continuing in the series, but I did give this book 3 stars. Welcome to the second intermission. What are we doing with this one? I don't know. I just kind of generally want to talk about my feelings about Friends, some of the things I noticed on my latest watch through. But first of all, I want to talk about the Friends merch that I have. This mug, which was given to me by a friend of mine, and I like it a lot. I just pulled it out of the cupboard downstairs, and I'm thinking it should be on display up here. And it can go in the little section where I have my Lego Friends set. This is half of it. This is Joey and Chandler's apartment with some very cute nods. Chandler and Joey have the Barco loungers that recline in unison, very cute. The big white dog is in here, the foosball table. Janice is here. Let's talk about Janice. Look at how precious she is. Janice is the unsung hero of Friends. She's one of the best characters. She's so funny all the time, but can easily fall into sincere. And she's just a delight every time that she's on screen. Every time she reappears, it is a joy. And I love that they kept the bit going all the way until season 10. It brings me a lot of joy. And then the other half, of course, is Monica's apartment. The purple here is perfect. The door looks great. The closet of messiness is one of my favorite moments, and it's full of junk. I won't open it for you because it'll be a disaster. This thing is falling apart the more I touch it, so let's just call it at that. And then I just wanted to talk through a couple of things that I notice about the show, I like about the show. I want to say season 5 is my favorite. Every single episode in season 5 is a gem. That's when Chandler and Monica start dating, and it's the best thing ever. I don't think the proposal is that season, but the proposal makes me cry every time. And this watch through actually gave me a real appreciation for Ross, which I know is the wrongest thing to say, but he is a fully formed character. You always know how Ross is going to react. He's always in character. Like, you believe that David Schwimmer is this guy and you hate him. If you don't hate Ross, then you're just wrong. It's a red flag if you don't hate Ross and think that he's a monster. But he is excellent for that show because he's a perfect foil to a lot of the characters and just like a very compelling non-villain villain. And he has some great moments when someone eats his sandwich and he flies off the handle. Like, yes, incredible, amazing. What's the line? I'm on sabbatical on account of my rage. Like, perfect and so Ross. And I just came away with not liking Ross, but liking the show more for having Ross in it, if that makes sense. Inversely, I thought that Monica actually really suffers in the show. I think that her character is a lot more clear in the first couple seasons with some of her particular neuroses, let's say. She's very loud and opinionated and stuff, and I noticed by the last season almost all that she's doing is the adoption of kids thing, and I feel like you lose a lot of her. I think that she is very much an everyman, but in a way where the scene is never hers. She is rarely the focal point of something. She's often buddying along with somebody else, or not the driving plot or emotional factor. She's great. I love Monica, but I did notice that I think that they fumbled her character. I think I know Monica. I don't know if they know Monica. This is getting very specific and rambly, so I'm just going to talk about one more thing, which is the Friends question to end all Friends questions. Were they on a break? Which is so interesting because every time I've watched the show, I've come away with not necessarily a different answer, but a different perspective on the we were on a break thing as a whole. Allow me to recap quickly. Rachel and Ross are dating, and Rachel has a coworker named Mark who Ross is very jealous of, and he is love bombing Rachel basically, and she like can't handle it anymore. And she says, maybe we need a break from us. He storms out and cheats on her, and then he tries to justify it by like, we were on a break, but they can't reconcile their differences. She says something like, I used to believe that you would never hurt me, and now that person that I used to know is gone, and I can't look at you the same way. And I was like, fair. That's how I see it, of like, he didn't technically cheat on her, they were technically on a break, but like, this is a tough thing to get over. You were not in the wrong for not getting over that. But what I've noticed on my latest iteration is that's not actually what happens. Ross leaves and then calls Rachel, and Mark is there. She says there's nothing to worry about. He's just like, here, it's nothing. I'm glad that you called. But Ross is so insecure that the mere presence of Mark causes him to go cheat on her. So he doesn't trust her at all. She told him nothing was happening. I'm sorry for what I did. I want you to come home. And he didn't hear any of that. He heard there was another man in my territory and flipped out and slept with someone else. And he's just completely in the wrong at that point. He just has no faith in someone that he claims to love, and he doesn't work through it. And she explains herself very well. It looks worse for Ross every time it happens. It feels very much like he wants someone to conform to what he wants and can't accept that Rachel is her own person with her own life and her own friends. And even though Mark likes her, that's not her fault. Who cares? So that is how I feel after my, I don't know, how many times have I watched the show? 5 times, let's say. So we'll see what the 6th go around gives me. All right, you've got 2 more books to go. I will see you on the other side.
Hi, Ken Adams. Nice to meet you.
Regina Phalange.
I hope you're ready for the quickest of updates. I have decided to DNF 1984, but not for real reasons. You will notice my bookmark is on page 1 because I don't like graphic novels. Like literally all I read was the first page, which looks like this, and it has the text, it was a bright cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13. And that's literally all I read. I went to search whether that was the opening line of the non-graphic version of this, and it is, and immediately that strikes a tone of mystery. And I think in a graphic novel a lot of the mystery is sort of removed. You're getting way more clues than you would in a novel. So I'm sure that this is good, but I already don't like graphic novels, and just from that opening, I'm really intrigued about what this is gonna do. So I'm gonna put this down and try to pick up the regular version. The only thing is it's super long, and I'm on hold for the audiobook of it, which is like 11 hours. And for something I'm not sure that I'm gonna love, I'm gonna wait for the audiobook. So you will not get my thoughts on 1984 in this video, which also means I can't speak to whether or not Phoebe would enjoy this. I should say we're reading this for Phoebe because of Regina Phalange, which is a pen name, and George Orwell is also a pen name. So I don't know if she would like it. It seems very in line with her ideals, but I don't know anything about the book other than cultural osmosis. So who knows? Hopefully I will get to it one day.
He made Rachel cry.
Rachel always cries.
Good morning. Last night I made it to 40% of the way through In the Lives of Puppets is what it's called. I didn't anticipate reading that far, but that's all of part 1, and you really don't get into what the book is actually going to be until that point. The synopsis talks about it too, so it's not a spoiler, but it takes a really long time to get going. And it's not going great. I think it'll be fine, but this is definitely not the TJ Klune that I know. The number one problem with it is the humor. So we're following this little family. Gio is the dad, Victor is the son, he's an adopted son, and then there are 2 robots that he is friends with, which I didn't read the synopsis in this, so it was kind of a surprise to me that this is more sci-fi than fantasy. So he's got these 2 robot sidekicks, and they're good and fun, except that there's meant to be comic relief characters, but they're basically main characters. Both of them speak more than Victor or Gio ever speak, which is just exhausting. Like, having humor on every single page, it won't land after a certain point. And they're very, like, they have one joke. So Rambo is one of them, and it's just very childlike and enthusiastic and it's stupid, naive, I guess. So like that's the joke always. And then the other one is Nurse Ratched, of course, and she's a sociopath, they say. So she's constantly having to engage empathy protocol in order to be nice. And a lot of the humor is just really of the moment too. Like, it's not funny now. Maybe it was funny 5 years ago, but it certainly won't be funny in 5 more. At one point they're looking through other discarded robots, and Nurse Ratched describes one of them as a MILF, a machine I'd like to fornicate, which is bad. That's a bad joke, I'm sorry. Within the first 10%, I seriously considered DNFing, but I'm glad I pushed through. I think it has the potential to do some interesting stuff, and there are nuggets of excellent TJ Klune writing and really poignant moments, but it's all just bogged down by comic relief characters that take up the majority of the story. And now, the point that I'm at, this is turning into a road trip. I think it's the wrong call, because the thing about the other TJ Klune books is they are so setting dependent. Like, this one takes place all inside of this coffee shop. This one is the house and the town, and I think that if you miss out on that world building quaintness, you're missing out on what makes TJ Klune. At least modern TJ Klune. I know he's written more than this, but this is what I have to go on. I'm trying to figure out a way to recommend this book at this point, of like who's the audience for this? What do you need to know before going in to have a good time? And I'm struggling. I just don't think this is very well executed. I think it's fine. I think it's fine, perfectly serviceable, but it's not good. Those are my thoughts only 40% of the way through, so I don't think there'll be much that I can say because I think it'll all be spoilers, so I'll check in with you when I'm done. I'm a little bit afraid to do this update, but we gotta get through it. I finished In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune, and I'm giving it 2 stars, which is completely unprecedented. I never thought that it would happen, and I'm very sad about it. In a way, I am glad though, because my inclination within the first 10% was to DNF, and I'm glad knowing that my instincts were right. There are people, like I looked at the Goodreads, this is an arc, it comes out April 25th, I want to say. So people have read it, people love it. Not everyone, but people love it. So it's good knowing that it's a me thing and that I'm pretty good at identifying when a book works for me and when it doesn't. That being said, I'm struggling to know who to recommend this to. Like, I don't know how to make it work, because it sounds like something I would like. It's a Pinocchio retelling, but instead of Pinocchio being a puppet, he's a robot. And robots gaining sentience is like one of my favorite things. Today I Am Carrie is about a robot who learns to love, and it's one of my favorite things ever, and this should have been the same feeling, but it absolutely wasn't. I think a large part of what didn't work about this book for me is that it's a retelling, and it's a beat by beat retelling. It's not the core of Pinocchio about consciousness and souls and stuff like that, but it turned into like, here's our version of Pleasure Island, here's our version of the circus. It had all of those elements that when I read feel forced. It feels like we have a script to follow, we have to make something fit for everything. And like, some of them are cute, but to me it just kind of ends up reading like reference humor. And one thing that I definitely know is me is I hate it when this is supposed to be like hundreds of years in the future and they are still using the idioms and stuff that we're using today. That just doesn't make any sense because like, we don't speak the same way that Shakespeare time people spoke, and that's like an equally long amount of time ago, and especially when the society of robots use human idioms. I hate that. This isn't the best example, but it's the only one I can think of where one of the robots said, "Shut your mouth," but that robot doesn't have a mouth traditionally, and I don't think that's where its like voice box would be and stuff anyway, and so it just doesn't make any sense, and yet they continue to do it. And I understand that like our idioms today also don't make sense, but I feel like it makes more sense. There's a through line for me. I would much prefer just idioms made out of whole cloth that I don't understand. Like, so instead of saying like burning the midnight oil, you say someone's battery pack looks depleted. That's so stupid. But hopefully you understand what I'm saying, and I totally understand that doesn't bother other people, but it really bothers me. And that's like what the whole book is, especially that it is humor and it tries to be humor the whole way, other than having some extremely adult themes. Later on they go to Pleasure Island, their equivalent of Pleasure Island, and there are some adult activities happening, if you catch my drift, which like I don't care about. But the other day I saw Cerulean Sea in a YA section, and I just hope that people who read this don't think it's that similar. I can see in pitch how you would think that these would be similar, but in content they feel really disparate to me. There were just a lot of things that I didn't like about it, but I think it was the way that they handled robots. Maybe I have a specific view on how robots should be handled. Maybe I'm more picky about sci-fi than I am fantasy. It just really didn't work. It tried to have this emotional ending that never landed for me, and I'm giving it 2 stars because I don't think that it is a bad book, but at no point was I ever having a good time. Totally unexpected, never could have seen this coming from a TJ Klune, but I'm happy to know. If you are interested though, don't take my word for gospel. Lots of other people have read it, lots of Goodreads reviews are up. Go check those out and decide for yourself, because I feel bad, but like, I don't think this is going to work for very many people who are expecting Cerulean Sea, Under the Whispering Door type stories. The cat is summoning me, so I'm gonna go and we can wrap this thing up. So now we've come to the end of what was not an overall successful vlog. We had 2 stars, 3 stars, a DNF. The only one that wasn't that was Winterdance, which is an incredible book and I highly recommend it. But I thought that a fun way of closing this out would be to recommend books to the Friends characters, something that I think they could potentially enjoy. Also, I always go in credit order. I can't help myself when listing the Friends. That's just the order it goes in. So here you go. So there's 2 things that we know about Rachel. One is that she's very gossipy, loves a good like gossip magazine, that kind of thing. And the other one is that she reads smut. We already know this about Rachel. So for the gossipy socialite side, I'm going to recommend The Favorite Sister by Jessica Knoll. This is a very Real Housewives kind of vibe with some murder. It doesn't have great reviews, but I had a great time in it. And I would also recommend Anna K by Jenny Lee. This is YA though, which is why I don't feel quite as strong in this, but this is the book that I prefer. It is a modern day retelling of Anna Karenina, and she also likes classics. So yeah, this is a very good Rachel pick. And then for the smutty side, I think that she would be a real fan of Talia Hibbert. I would say something in the Brown Sisters trilogy. Everyone seems to have their favorite of the group. I don't know which one it would be for her, but I'm sure one of these books she would love. Monica feels so obvious to me. I only have one vibe for her because I feel like these are just inevitably books that she would love. First off is Emily Henry. Monica is the most Emily Henry girl I have ever seen. I think that she would love book lovers especially. This is just a perfect Monica pick. It's sort of like literary but approachable literary, and the other author I have for that is Frederick Backman. Anxious People is hilarious and heartfelt, and I think that Monica would absolutely love it, and as do I. Now for Phoebe, the vibe is weird fun. And the other thing I'm thinking for Phoebe is like something that she can relate to, her life on the streets. She has an edge to her that comes out sometimes. So for weird fun, I'm recommending Bunny. I think that Phoebe would have such a good time with this and would love freaking people out. Like I can completely imagine her calling everybody Bunny immediately after reading this book, and I think she'd have a great time. And then for the grittier side, I have They Never Learn by Lane Fargo, about a female serial killer who is a professor killing kids on campus. It's just a good time, a very good for her story, and I think Phoebe would like it. For Joey, we have two very different vibes. There's only one plot line on the show that involves reading, and it's when Rachel and Joey swap books because Joey loves The Shining and has to put it in the freezer. So I'm going on that trajectory for one of them. And then the other one is when Joey finds Rachel's smut. And I think that there's a way to get him to, if not take it seriously, at least have a good time. First of all is the ultimate put it in the freezer when it gets too scary book, House of Leaves. This is such a good Joey pick. I can't stand it. It's maybe a little highbrow is the wrong word, but it's dense. It's a project to take this on. But I also think that he'd be really engaged with all of the sections that are completely empty pages or like upside down reading and stuff. I think that this is a very engaging book for Joey. Actually, let me do two, because Illuminae is, I think, very much the multimedia vibe, I think, is what Joey would enjoy, but this is a lot more approachable and a lot more fun. This is a lot scarier. And then for some smut, I gotta give it up to Ice Planet Barbarians, because I think that he would think that this is so funny, but this also has some really interesting sci-fi world building that I really enjoyed, that really caught me off guard and made me invested in the story in a different way. And I think potentially the same could be true for Joey. Next up for Chandler, what we know about him is he's a big softie. He's very emotional and sweet and owns 2 copies of the Annie soundtrack. So something in that vein, sweet, wholesome. And then we also know that he's an aspiring comic writer, potentially comic strips, but in the world of comics and graphic novels. So that's our second pick. For Sickly Sweet, I have The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I think he would absolutely love. I think that it might be a tough sell to get into this. It's a very maybe girly looking book that he wouldn't like, but this is so sweet and just about the kids loving each other, and I think that Chandler would definitely tear up in this one. And then for comics, we have the classic Watchmen. I think that if Chandler has not read this, he would really like it, because it's smart and fun and inventive and a twist on comics that we don't necessarily see, and I think this is a slam dunk pick. Even if I did have to destroy my shelves to get it out, and it's just gonna sit here now. Which of course just leaves Ross. What is the one thing that we know about Ross? He likes dinosaurs. Easy first pick. These picks are just kind of insults to Ross, but I think are still good. What's the one thing we know about him? He's kind of homophobic. He's not super chill about his wife being a lesbian, and he has very homophobic language, and he's also not great about his son. His son wanted a Barbie and he took it away from him. Ross has some character growth to do, so we're gonna do one of those. So our dinosaur book is One Day All This Will Be Yours by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is about a man who time travels and to the end of the world to stop some stuff happening, and he has a pet dinosaur, and Ross would either love this book or just constantly point out all the flaws in it. That's not how it really works. That's not how science works. You can't time travel. So it really, really could go either way with him. I don't know. But the other book for relating to his son is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, which I really think is an excellent pick, because it's about these 2 dads who each had a gay son who were married to each other, but they never had a good relationship with their son, either of them. and then their sons are murdered and the dads kind of team up and take revenge. It's a revenge thriller with like very stabby, lots of action, but very positive messaging at the core about like accepting your son, coming to understand and love gay people. And I think that it's a way to trick Ross into learning amongst all of the gunfights and stuff that are like a good thrilling time. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that this Friends themed thing lived up to the Friends-ness of it, and I just had a great time, and I hope that you did too. I will be back with the April TBR any second now, so subscribe if you haven't. Stick around for that, and thank you for joining me, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.